Silence is one of the most powerful languages that exists between two souls who once shared connection. It carries a vibration that words can never reach. When you stop talking, stop explaining, stop defending, and simply remove your energy, something profound happens in the invisible realm of communication. The person who once took your presence for granted suddenly begins to notice the absence that now fills their space. They begin to feel the emptiness that used to be filled with your voice, your laughter, your attention, your care. Silence becomes a message, not a message of bitterness, but of evolution. It says, I am no longer fighting for a place where my energy was never valued. And though you may think he's moved on, he begins to feel a pull, a curiosity, a strange desire to know what you're doing now that you've gone quiet. When you step back, you allow nature to restore balance. Constant contact keeps energy attached. When you stop, energy starts to flow differently. He may have thought you were always going to be available, that you'd always answer, always respond, always check in. But when that rhythm breaks, his world quietly shifts. Suddenly, he realizes there's a void. The person who once filled his notifications, his thoughts, his conversations, has gone silent. And the silence isn't angry, it's dignified. It's not screaming for attention, it's commanding it through absence. This kind of silence carries self-respect. It's the silence of someone who has learned their worth. You're not punishing him with your silence. You're preserving your peace. You're reclaiming your energy and refusing to waste it on someone who couldn't see your value when it was freely given. That kind of silence becomes magnetic because people are drawn to what they can't figure out. When you talk too much, you remove the mystery. But when you go quiet, you leave space for imagination. And imagination is powerful. It builds stories, it creates emotion, it awakens longing. He starts to wonder why you stopped reaching out, who you're spending time with, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. And that curiosity becomes his new obsession. What he doesn't realize is that your silence is not about him. It's about your healing. You've turned inward, refocusing your attention on yourself. You've started to listen to your own needs instead of trying to meet his. You're no longer explaining why you're good enough. You're living in the proof that you already are. Every moment you stay quiet, every time you resist the urge to check on him or respond, you strengthen your power. You're teaching yourself that you don't need validation from someone who couldn't appreciate you when he had you. That strength builds slowly, quietly, but deeply. And in that silence, he starts to hear echoes of his choices. He replays conversations, rereads old messages, looks at your pictures, and wonders where you went emotionally. The mind of someone who loses a good thing doesn't move on easily. It tries to return to the familiar. But what once felt predictable is now gone. The silence disturbs his comfort. It makes him restless. He may pretend he's fine, post pictures, talk to new people, live his life. But deep down, he's aware of your absence. He may even start checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, pretending he doesn't care while secretly trying to figure out why he can't stop thinking about you. That's what silence does. It makes people think in ways your words never could. You see, silence exposes truth. When you're no longer present to fill the space with noise, he is forced to face his own mind. He has to listen to his own thoughts, thoughts that might be filled with regret, guilt, confusion, or longing. It's in your absence that he finally starts to understand the meaning of your presence. That's why silence is not weakness, it's a mirror. It reflects back to him what he's done, what he's lost, and what he's ignored. While you're quiet, he's restless. While you're healing, he's replaying. While you're growing stronger, he's searching for the version of you that used to need him. But that version no longer exists. This silence transforms you. It teaches you that attention is energy, and where you place it determines your peace. You learn to stop giving energy to confusion, to stop chasing explanations that only break your spirit. You begin to understand that you don't have to fight for closure. Silence is closure. You don't have to demand respect. Silence earns it. You don't have to prove your worth. Your absence reveals it. The same silence that once felt empty becomes the very thing that protects you from emotional chaos. It's not the silence of weakness. It's the silence of power. And while he's watching you from afar, trying to read your every move, wondering what's changed, you continue to evolve. You keep moving forward, but quietly. You don't post to prove anything. You don't speak to get a reaction. You simply live. And that quiet living, that peace, that glow, that discipline, it speaks volumes. He thought silence meant the end, but it was really the beginning of your strength. Detachment is not about ignoring someone out of pride or bitterness. It's about reclaiming your energy from a place that no longer values it. When you pull back and stop trying to convince someone of your worth, you create a space that begins to shift the entire dynamic. Suddenly, what was once ordinary becomes mysterious. The constant flow of your message's attention or affection stops, and that change in rhythm disturbs his sense of control. The person who was once predictable now becomes unpredictable. That unpredictability is what creates curiosity. When he can no longer anticipate your actions, he begins to pay closer attention. He starts to check your social media, reread old texts, and watch your silence like it's saying something he can't interpret. That's what detachment does. It makes him think more about you than he ever did when you were available. The energy of detachment holds power because it's rooted in inner peace, not resentment. It's the quiet confidence that says, I no longer need you to understand me for me to be at peace. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're no longer chasing closure or asking for explanations that only leave you feeling small. Instead, you're focused on your growth, your healing, your elevation. And the irony is the moment you stop chasing, you start attracting. Because energy is magnetic and nothing draws someone back like indifference wrapped in self-worth. Detachment changes the energy between two people. When you were emotionally attached, he felt your presence everywhere. In your tone, your responses, your efforts. He could feel your need for connection. But when that energy disappears, he feels the absence. He starts to notice how quiet it's become without you seeking him out. What once felt like control now feels like uncertainty. He's no longer sure how you feel, what you think, or if you still care. That uncertainty becomes a kind of tension that pulls him back into your orbit. He may not say it out loud, but he's watching, checking, wondering. The truth is, detachment is not about pretending you don't care. It's about no longer letting your emotions control you. It's a mature form of love. Love redirected inward. You've stopped living in reaction to him. You've stopped trying to decode his mixed signals or adjust yourself to meet his inconsistency. That shift doesn't go unnoticed. He feels it. He may even test it by trying to trigger a reaction just to see if he still has the same effect on you. But when you remain calm, grounded, and emotionally steady, that's when he realizes something has changed. Not temporarily, but permanently. When you detach, you stop feeding his ego. You stop being part of the cycle that validates his behavior. You're no longer the source of his reassurance. You're not there to make him feel important. That's why detachment can feel so threatening to the person who once took your attention for granted. Because deep down, people crave the energy of being wanted. When that energy is removed, they start searching for it again, often from the very person who withdrew it. That's when he begins to monitor your moves. Not out of love, but out of confusion. He's trying to figure out when he lost the control he thought he had. There's something deeply magnetic about a woman who walks away with grace. No drama, no warnings, no loud exit, just distance and peace. That kind of energy is unforgettable. Detachment allows you to embody that presence. You stop chasing closure and instead become the closure. You stop seeking answers from others and find them within yourself. You become emotionally independent. And that independence carries an energy that's both peaceful and powerful. He can feel that you no longer need him to define your value. And when someone senses that they're no longer the center of your emotional world, it unsettles them. They may act as though they've moved on, but their actions start to betray them. Late night scrolls, subtle check-ins, random messages, sudden interest in your life again. That's what detachment creates, a shift that pulls them toward you, even while you've stopped reaching out. Detachment also teaches you emotional discipline. It's not easy to let go of someone you cared about. It takes strength to stop explaining your heart to someone who doesn't listen. But as you learn to master your emotions, you also begin to master your energy. You start seeing things clearly. The patterns, the manipulation, the imbalance. What once confused you now becomes obvious. You no longer seek temporary comfort in communication. You find long-term peace in separation. And in that peace, your confidence grows. The glow that comes from detachment is different. It's not external, it's internal. It's calm, effortless, and deeply attractive. He notices that glow. He might not understand it, but he feels it. He'll look at your pictures and see something in your eyes that wasn't there before. Serenity. He'll sense that you're not pretending to be fine, you actually are. That realization bothers him, because for the first time, your happiness no longer depends on him. You're no longer waiting for him to call, to text, or to show up. You've become centered in your own world. And the moment he feels that emotional shift, he starts to gravitate toward it, hoping to be part of it again. Detachment changes everything because it breaks emotional dependency. It turns pain into power and confusion into clarity. It shows that your silence is not emptiness, it's fullness. You're no longer drained by giving energy to someone who didn't value it. Instead, you're investing that same energy into becoming stronger, wiser, and more at peace. And while you rise in silence, he's there in the background, watching, wondering, and realizing that the woman he thought he understood is now a mystery he can't solve. Growth is the quiet force that transforms pain into purpose. When you begin to grow after someone has underestimated or abandoned you, something powerful happens, not only within you, but around you. The same person who once looked at you as if you were replaceable begins to see what he walked away from through the lens of your evolution. Growth doesn't need announcements or validation. It speaks through your actions, your peace, and your progress. When you start rising, not to prove a point, but because you finally understand your worth, you naturally draw attention, even from those who thought they had moved on. He begins to notice the subtle changes, your confidence, your glow, your silence, your independence. He may not say it out loud, but he's watching. He's observing the version of you that no longer needs him. And that observation becomes a quiet torment. There's something magnetic about a person who evolves through pain instead of being destroyed by it. You could have stayed stuck, waiting for closure, drowning in overthinking. But instead, you redirected all that energy into building yourself, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. That decision to grow is what separates those who remain wounded from those who rise. Growth is not loud. It doesn't seek revenge or competition. It's not about proving who was right or wrong. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself that were lost in the chaos. It's about realizing that your worth was never dependent on someone's ability to recognize it. When you embody that mindset, you radiate a new kind of energy, one that can't be faked or hidden. That's why he's still checking your every move, because he senses a shift that he can't quite explain. The irony of growth is that it often begins in darkness. When you were hurting, questioning your value, and feeling abandoned, it felt like nothing good could come from it. But that very pain became your teacher. It forced you to reflect, to reset, to rise. It taught you to stop looking outward for love and start building it within. Every tear watered your strength. Every sleepless night turned into clarity. And with time, you started to rebuild, stronger, wiser, softer in spirit, but harder to break. That transformation didn't happen overnight, but slowly, as you let go of the need to be understood by someone who never tried to understand you. As you grew, he began to notice. Maybe he caught glimpses of your happiness through mutual friends or through your quiet confidence that no longer sought attention. Maybe he scrolled through your profile looking for signs of sadness, only to find peace instead. Maybe he thought you'd be waiting, but you weren't. Growth confuses those who expected you to stay broken. He starts to question how you healed so gracefully, how you managed to find yourself without him. That's the power of transformation. It unsettles those who once thought they held your power. Growth is not about revenge, it's about revelation. The more you evolve, the more your presence reveals truth. It reveals who was genuine and who wasn't. It reveals who celebrated you and who only tolerated you. It reveals the strength you never knew you had. And the beauty of it is that your growth becomes your silent speaking. You don't need to explain your progress. The way you carry yourself says everything. You no longer need to post pain to prove that you've healed. You no longer chase validation. You've learned that true confidence doesn't announce itself, it walks quietly, letting others feel it. He begins to realize that the woman he left behind is not the same one standing before him now. You've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated inconsistency. You've stopped chasing what wasn't meant for you. And that shift, that evolution, is something he can't ignore. He may act as if he doesn't care, but his actions tell the truth. He's watching your life, curious about your transformation, wondering how you found peace after he caused your pain. He checks because he feels disconnected from your growth. He checks because he senses that you've moved beyond the emotional space where he once had power. Growth also brings awareness. You begin to see the situation for what it was, not what you wanted it to be. You stop romanticizing what broke you. You stop justifying red flags. You begin to understand that losing him wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was the universe clearing space for your evolution. And the more you grow, the more you realize that your worth never decreased just because someone failed to see it. Their inability to recognize your value doesn't define your value. It only defines their vision. With every new step you take, every goal you accomplish, every moment you smile again, you silently send a message to the past. You didn't destroy me, you built me. And while you move forward, he stays stuck in reflection. He replays memories not because he's nostalgic, but because your progress highlights his stagnation. He checks your every move because he wants to understand how you became so strong. But he can't, because strength isn't explained. It's earned through pain, patience, and self-love. Growth is the ultimate revenge because it doesn't require bitterness. It doesn't require payback. It simply requires evolution. The best part is you don't even have to announce that you're doing better. People will see it. They'll feel it in your energy, in your smile, in the way you carry yourself. The person who thought you couldn't live without him starts to realize that you were never dependent on him. You were simply loyal. And once you outgrow that attachment, you become untouchable. Your light, your peace, your confidence, all of it become reminders of what he lost. He might have thought he was over you, but your growth keeps him bound to the memory of you, checking your progress, wondering how someone he once knew has become someone he can no longer reach. Energy is the invisible language that connects people even when words are no longer exchanged. It travels beyond distance, beyond silence, and beyond logic. When two people have shared emotions, time and space cannot completely erase that connection. The energy between them simply changes form. When you finally detach, heal, and rise, your energy shifts from need to peace, from confusion to clarity, from attachment to independence. That shift is powerful because it is deeply felt. Even if you never speak again, he senses it. The energy that once chased him now flows inward. The vibration that once sought attention now radiates self-respect. It's not something you do consciously. It's a transformation that happens when you reclaim your own power. And while he may act as though he's indifferent, he can feel that the bond has changed. He may not understand what's happening, but his intuition tells him something is different, And that's what makes him start watching again. When your energy changes, everything about your presence changes too. The way you walk, the way you smile, the way you carry yourself. There's a calmness, a certainty, a glow that wasn't there before. You're no longer operating from emotional chaos. You're operating from peace. You've stopped trying to control the outcome, and that surrender creates a new type of confidence. That kind of energy is magnetic. It draws attention effortlessly because it's pure and authentic. It's not about pretending to be fine. It's about actually being fine. People can feel when your spirit is free. He can feel it too. It unsettles him because the version of you he remembers is no longer the one that exists. The woman who used to react, explain, or beg for understanding now simply exists in stillness. And that stillness speaks volumes. Energy never lies. You can say you're over someone, but your energy will always reveal the truth. Likewise, when you've truly healed, that energy of peace becomes your greatest shield. It protects you from manipulation and emotional games because you no longer feed into them. When he feels that he no longer has emotional access to you, his curiosity awakens. It's human nature. People are drawn to what they can't reach. Your silence, your calm, your new boundaries create an energetic wall that he can't cross. And that wall is not built from anger. It's built from wisdom. You've learned that peace is more valuable than attention. And once you start valuing peace, everything about you becomes more attractive. Not because you're trying to be, but because you're finally aligned with yourself. The energy of peace has a frequency that others can feel even through a screen. That's why he starts checking your social media, scrolling through your photos, wondering what changed. It's not just the way you look, it's the way your energy radiates. You seem lighter, calmer, more sure of yourself. That transformation reminds him of what he took for granted. He may not consciously admit it, but his attention gravitates back to you because the energy you now hold is the very energy he once drained from you. Now that you've taken it back, he feels the absence of it. The void he tried to fill with distractions becomes louder because the energy that once soothed his ego is gone. Your new energy also changes how you perceive him. You no longer see him as someone who defines your worth. You see him as a chapter that helped you understand your power. That shift is spiritual. When you move from emotional dependence to emotional freedom, the universe mirrors that change in every part of your life. You begin attracting better experiences, higher connections, and deeper peace. And as that energy expands, it silently calls attention. Without saying a word, you begin to inspire curiosity and admiration. People start noticing your confidence. They can feel that you've elevated. And while you continue focusing on your growth, he remains energetically tied to the version of you he can no longer reach. When someone has been emotionally connected to you, they subconsciously track your vibration. They can feel when it rises. They can sense when you stop thinking about them. They may not understand it logically, but they feel an energetic distance that didn't exist before. That's what drives him to check, to look, to wonder. The shift in your vibration communicates something that words never could. You've moved on, not out of anger, but out of awareness. The energy that used to flow toward him has now been redirected back to you. And that creates an imbalance that he can't ignore. He feels that pull because energy seeks balance. And when he realizes he's no longer the center of your emotional world, he instinctively tries to reconnect with it, even if only by watching from afar. You've stopped pouring energy into dead spaces. You've stopped over-explaining your feelings. You've stopped trying to change someone's perception of you. Instead, you've redirected that same energy into becoming centered and grounded. That redirection is what strengthens your aura. It's why you walk differently now. It's why you no longer chase or question. Your silence is no longer a wound. It's wisdom. The energy of desperation has been replaced by the energy of assurance. He can feel that. And while you may think he's moved on, part of him is still connected to that frequency that once tied you together. That's why he checks. Because on a soul level, he senses that he's no longer aligned with your vibration. The truth about energy is that it's contagious. The energy you hold affects not only your relationships, but your reality. When you operate from self-worth, you begin to attract peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion. That energetic shift doesn't just heal you, it exposes others. It reveals who was truly connected to you and who was connected only to your energy supply. When you stop feeding others with your emotional availability, their true dependence becomes clear. He starts to realize that it wasn't just you who needed him. It was him who depended on the energy you gave. Now that it's gone, he feels the emptiness of his own emotional void. That's what your energy does. It teaches him through silence what words could never make him see. And as you continue to rise, his awareness of that loss grows stronger, pushing him to observe you from the shadows, drawn by the same energy that now belongs entirely to you. Indifference is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. It's not about coldness, arrogance, or pretending not to care. It's about no longer giving emotional access to someone who hasn't earned it. It's the calm that comes after chaos, the silence that comes after explanation, the peace that comes after pain. When you reach the point of indifference, you're no longer moved by what once shook your world. You've stopped seeking closure from someone who could never give it. You've stopped reacting to behavior that once drained your spirit. That's when true power begins to surface, not through control, but through composure. The one who can remain calm in the face of emotional storms holds the advantage without ever lifting a finger. That calmness is what disturbs him, because your peace disrupts the control he once thought he had over you. When you become indifferent, your energy changes completely. You no longer chase validation, you no longer check for responses, and you no longer wonder what he's doing or thinking. That mental silence is what catches his attention. He was used to your emotional reactions, the messages, the questions, and the attempts to fix things. When that pattern disappears, he notices the absence. He doesn't see it as peace at first, he feels it as distance. It bothers him because he's lost the emotional pull he once relied on. He might have thought you'd always be there, always caring, always waiting, but your indifference proves otherwise. You no longer rise and fall based on his presence or absence. That stability makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability creates curiosity. He starts to wonder how you became so unaffected. Indifference doesn't mean you stopped caring overnight. It means you've redirected your care. You've chosen to invest it in yourself instead of pouring it into someone who didn't appreciate it. You start to realize that your peace is more valuable than any explanation or argument. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop explaining your silence. You simply exist without needing to prove anything. That kind of emotional maturity is rare. And when someone experiences it from a person they used to have control over, it creates a kind of invisible tension. He starts to wonder what changed you, what shifted your heart so deeply that his actions no longer have the same effect. The beauty of indifference is that it removes emotional dependency. You no longer attach your happiness to his approval or attention. You no longer measure your worth by whether he texts back or shows up. You understand that peace isn't found in what you receive from others, but in what you create within yourself. That realization changes everything. He can sense that shift in your vibration even without a single word being spoken. When he looks at you, he no longer sees the same energy he used to control. He sees confidence, detachment, and emotional balance. That energy quietly communicates that you've outgrown the emotional games, and that awareness unsettles him more than any confrontation ever could. Indifference teaches you that your emotions are your greatest currency, and not everyone deserves to spend them. When you stop paying with your attention, people realize the value of what they once took for granted. You don't have to announce your detachment. It's felt in your silence, your composure, your glow. He'll check your page, your posts, your updates, looking for signs that you still care, that you still think about him, that you still need his validation. But all he finds is calmness. No subtweets, no bitterness, no desperate quotes, just peace. That absence of reaction tells him everything he needs to know. It tells him that you've let go emotionally. And once someone truly lets go, it's nearly impossible to regain that access again. Indifference is powerful because it flips the dynamic. When you no longer respond emotionally, he becomes the one who reacts. When you stop explaining, he starts wondering. When you stop chasing, he starts observing. That's how the energy reverses. Quietly, naturally, and without effort. You've stopped giving life to the connection that no longer served you, and in doing so, you've taken your power back. People often think control comes from action, but true control comes from restraint. The ability to remain calm while someone expects you to crumble is the highest form of self-mastery. That's why your peace disturbs him. It's proof that you've transcended the emotional level where he once held influence. He may try to provoke you again, just to see if he still has an effect. He might test your boundaries, send a message, post something to catch your attention, or try to reappear under the guise of curiosity. But your indifference will disarm him. The lack of reaction, the steady tone, the emotional distance. It all communicates that you're not the same person he left behind. You're no longer fueled by emotions that kept you bound. You respond from awareness now, not attachment. That quiet strength is what he can't compete with, because it's not about ego anymore, it's about peace. Indifference also reveals truth. It shows you who was drawn to your love and who was drawn to your attention. When you stop giving both, only the genuine remain. You realize that people's reactions to your peace tell you everything about their intentions. Those who were feeding off your emotional energy can't survive your silence. They begin to fade when they can no longer get a reaction from you. But the ones who truly care will respect your boundaries, even in stillness. That's how you start filtering energy without confrontation, simply by being unmoved. When you reach indifference, you begin to see everything clearly. The illusions fade. The stories you told yourself no longer hold power. You start to understand that love doesn't mean losing yourself, and peace doesn't require permission. You learn that walking away quietly is not weakness, it's wisdom. He checks your life now because he feels the loss of control, not necessarily the loss of love. Your calmness makes him realize that he no longer occupies space in your emotions, and that realization weighs heavily. Indifference is the moment you stop dancing to the rhythm of someone else's inconsistency. It's when you finally realize that your emotions belong to you and no one else has the right to play with them. When you finally reach a place where you choose peace over attention, you become the lesson, not the regret. There comes a point when your silence, your growth, and your absence begin to echo louder than any words you could ever speak. He starts to see you differently. Not because you've changed who you are for him, but because you've changed who you are for yourself. You no longer operate from the need to be seen, heard, or validated. You operate from the truth of your own worth. And that shift alone is magnetic. He begins to look from a distance, realizing that the woman he once took for granted has become the very standard he can no longer reach. You become the reflection of what he lost because you learned to value what he ignored. There's something powerful about a person who chooses to walk away without resentment. That quiet dignity carries an energy that can't be forgotten. It lingers in the back of his mind when he tries to move on. It whispers in his thoughts when he sees your name, your picture, your progress. He starts to wonder how you managed to rebuild yourself so gracefully. He remembers moments where you could have reacted, begged, or fought for his attention, but you didn't. You simply grew. And that's what haunts him. Because growth has a way of exposing immaturity. Your transformation reveals the gap between who he is and who you've become. He realizes he didn't just lose you. He lost access to the peace, the love, and the stability you carried within you. You become the mirror that shows him his mistakes without ever saying a word. Every step you take in confidence reflects his decision back to him. He begins to recognize that while he was busy searching for something better, you are evolving into something extraordinary. And it's not revenge, it's revelation. Your self-respect becomes the evidence that he mishandled something rare. You didn't have to announce your healing. Your glow made the announcement for you. You didn't have to prove your worth. Your silence became the proof. And now, even when he pretends not to care, he can't help but observe, compare, and question. Because deep down, he knows he was a temporary chapter in your story, but you became a permanent imprint in his memory. When you step into this kind of power, you stop needing closure. You realize the lesson was never about him. It was about you remembering who you are. You were never supposed to chase, compete, or convince anyone to value you. You were meant to rise so high that the same people who underestimated you would have to watch you from a distance, unable to reach your frequency. And that's what he's doing now. Checking, observing, wondering. He's not checking because he still loves you in the same way. He's checking because he's curious how you managed to become so complete without him. You've shown him that love without respect means nothing. You've shown him that losing you was not his punishment. It was his consequence. You become the woman who no longer waits for apologies. You stop replaying the story. Stop questioning your worth. Stop wondering why he didn't see your value. You begin to understand that people don't recognize diamonds when they're too busy collecting stones. Your evolution becomes your answer. Every new achievement, every new level of peace, every smile that doesn't need his presence. That's your silent statement. And he sees it all. Maybe he doesn't say anything. Maybe he hides behind pride, but he feels it. He feels the emptiness of a connection that once made him feel alive. He feels the difference between your authenticity and the temporary attention he now chases. That's why he checks. That's why he still watches. Because deep down, he knows he lost something that can't be replicated. It's never about showing off or trying to make him regret. It's about becoming so centered in your own power that his validation no longer defines you. You understand now that the love you were giving him was meant to be redirected toward yourself. You start to treat yourself the way you wished he had, with care, consistency, and appreciation. That inner shift radiates outward. Suddenly, your life becomes a silent example of self-worth. You stop explaining yourself, you stop defending your choices, and you start living in a way that commands respect without words. And that's when the tables turn. He thought he was over you, but the truth is he's now learning from you. Because when a woman evolves, she becomes both the reminder and the lesson. The reminder of what genuine love felt like, and the lesson of what happens when you take it for granted. He watches your transformation because it teaches him what he wasn't ready to understand before. That real love doesn't beg to be seen. It simply becomes undeniable. You've become that undeniable. And now every time he checks, every time he remembers, every time he scrolls through your life silently, it's not just curiosity. It's realization. Realization that he lost the woman who discovered her power in the very moment she decided she no longer needed him to recognize it.